Morning, everybody. My name is Mike Harrison. I run the Milwaukee office of BioForward. Thank you all for coming today. So today we're going to have a showcase of young companies throughout Wisconsin. The companies, everybody's going to come up and give sort of a short presentation, and then we'll go into more of a moderated discussion, and you'll have a chance to ask questions too. A little smaller space here, so it's a little easier, a little easier. We usually don't use mics for the audience questions in here, so you can kind of just shout your questions. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce Tobias Zutz, who is the founder and CEO of Gregor Diagnostics.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm the founder, CEO of Gregor Diagnostics, and at Gregor we're developing a better screening test for prostate cancer. This is the one slide I have, so it's very interesting, isn't it? A little bit about me. I went to the university in biochemistry and genetics. I worked at a handful of companies, most recently Exact Sciences from 2009 to 2015. Left the company and knew I wanted to be at a startup again, but didn't know exactly which one or what kind, and ended up taking my time and going to WARF as the first step to be like, hey, it's new technology in Madison, it's at WARF. And so we sat down and went through a bunch of their technologies, and through those conversations, I got to go and have a conversation with Dave Gerard, who's a urologic oncologist, and looked at prostate cancer and noticed a couple of very interesting things. One, prostate cancer is the #2 cancer killer for men in the United States and the most diagnosed cancer, and screening rates have been declining since 2008. So when I looked at that, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. What's going on here? Why is this the problem? And the problem is the screening test. It's this PSA test. It's been around since the early 90s and really hasn't changed and isn't a very great test. So the plan was, well, let's develop a new test, and that's kind of where we started. From then, I was able to do the G-Beta program that really helped me kind of solidify the story. And then I went to Texas and did a Health Wildcatters accelerator to further do that and get some more introductions and expand our network. And then last year, we raised $900,000 from VCs in California, New York, and some money from Texas and a bunch of angels to do our first study in how this works. So last year, we were able to build a team, hired a couple scientists and a clinical manager now this last year to run our first clinical study, and we're in the midst of doing that, which we should have done over the next several months. So we are very early trying to tackle a big problem that affects 36 million men aged 50 to 70 in the US. So that's kind of the very brief story of what we are and what we're trying to do. I'll just go on from there. So, thanks.
And now, please welcome Sanjay Mohan, who is the President and CEO of Healthio.
Good morning, everyone. Great to be here, and exciting sessions this morning. I don't know if any of you caught the news flash this morning. Regardless of what you might think of Russia, 43% reduction in alcohol consumption over the last 10 years. Why is it relevant to what we are talking about today? Any thoughts? Reduction of mortality, and also they show impact on morbidity. We all know that only about 10% of addressable mortality is in the hands of the physician. But I wish we could do something more beyond just focusing on clinical care, right? So in every industry, it's been demonstrated that there's an exponential curve between the cost of a fix and when the problem is actually discovered. In other words, the later on you find the problem and fix it, the more expensive it is, and the suboptimal the fix is. Unfortunately, we are in an industry where the principle is break fix. We'll fix it when it actually breaks. Healthcare systems globally were designed when we were all as a population dealing with infectious diseases, not anymore. And even today, the system pushes back, and not just here, everywhere in the world, pushes back on anything to do with preventive care. I mean, it's evident in the lack of funding available for preventive programs, as well as in the plethora of studies out there in the market around debate on whether prevention is cost justified. Well, my name is Sanjay Mohan. I'm the founder and CEO of Healthio. I spent about 25 years working with Fortune 500 companies around the world, focusing on using technology for innovation, transformation, disruption. And my learning has been typically, and history has shown, right from the spice trade route till date, that industries which display a complex user experience, perhaps multiple redundant intermediaries, a broken trust, lack of access, typically are ripe for disruption. I don't know whether Healthio will disrupt healthcare or not, no idea, I don't have a crystal ball, but we will play a role by making sure that we are focusing on our true north, which is trying to make healthcare a lot more about health and not just sick care. That's our reason for existence. What does it mean? How do we do it? Healthio is a platform which acquires longitudinal data in those 5,000 hours that one spends away from the healthcare system. Our aspiration is also to digitize the human body as we grow up and combine large population data with the individual data. Use IoT and microsocial networks to achieve engagement and compliance, and of course an AI engine in the back to predict and prevent the progression of conditions as well as any adverse events that may come out of those conditions. And hence our goal really is to make healthcare a lot more predictive, preventive, and participative. Thank you, happy to be here.
Okay, and now I'll ask Tiffany Mullen, CEO and co-founder of WellnessScript, to come up and talk about her company.
Thank you. Good morning. Can everybody hear me? Are we good in the back? I have like a small voice, so are you good back there? Okay, cool. Sanjay did a great job. Sanjay's my friend. He did such a great job of teeing me up. Let's get into that health mindset now. So my name is Tiffany Mullen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of WellnessScript. We are a platform market network specializing in functional medicine. And usually when I say that to people, there's a lot of thought bubbles with question marks in them. So I see that all over the room. So I'm going to break it down. I have actually lots of slides to show you. I'm very visual. So I'll get through what each of those components actually means. But for now, I want you to think about it in 3 parts. We are software that serves as a telemedicine connection, so a virtual visit connection between patients and physicians. We are also practice support for the physicians and also support for patients in those hours between visits. And we are a pharmacy that supplies products of various types to patients in their homes. So everything happens in the home. We do this because in today's rapid 10 to 15 minute office visit, superficial approach to care, a lot of physicians are fairly disgruntled with that approach. I'm a physician myself. In 10 minutes, really all you can solve for is symptoms, and the only solution you can typically provide is either a referral to somebody else or a prescription. And patients who have not necessarily complicated medical problems, but more complicated than a typical pill for ill, are falling short and sort of sitting in this gap between like, well, now what do I do? How do I get this problem solved? So let's start with functional medicine, because I'm pretty sure that most of you haven't heard of functional medicine before. Functional medicine is an approach to care that looks at solving problems for root cause. So really getting underneath the problem and unpacking that problem at the level of genetics, at biomarkers, at lifestyle. Our visits are at least an hour. We really get to know patients well, and we're looking to solve the problems, the symptoms that they're bringing to us, as opposed to just covering them up with symptoms. Covering their symptoms up with prescriptions. So how does it work? So here's the part of the software. So when a patient comes to us, they're essentially dissatisfied with the answers or the prescriptions that they've been given for their problems, and they're looking for something else. They come in through our platform, and they either know what they want, or they know somebody that they want to see, or they don't know. They're not really sure. If they don't know, they can go through a symptom quiz that's algorithmically allows them to find the right physician. And it's not just about their symptoms and who the best person would be to solve the problem, but also in the telemedicine world, the licensure that's needed to be able to deliver care. We see patients, the telemedicine visit is defined as where the patient is, not where the physician is. So we have to take that into consideration as well. So once they are matched, they have their visit on a video. So patients at home, physicians at home, or wherever they are, This is an actual rendering of our just about to go live software product that's an electronic medical record for the physician. And on the patient side, it's actually a great portal for them to be able to access everything. Everything that the patient brings to the table, their story, their history, their medical history, their medications, all the test results that they've had, bottles of things that they can take pictures with, all of that is populated for the physician so that the physician doesn't have to be that clerical person. They can actually just spend that time listening. And we put the patient smack in the middle of the electronic medical record so that the physician can do everything that they need while not losing eye contact with the patient. Oops, go back. So then what happens is after the visit, or maybe even during the visit, the physician is getting an idea of what they want to do. They're going to order some test kits, and you'll see the test kits there on the left side, that are shipped to the patient's home, or they might order some daily supplement packets that are customized based on genomics and biomarkers and so on. Or we have a compounding pharmacy that will make medications de novo for patients depending on their situation. All of that is packed up and fulfilled in our pharmacy and sent out to the patient. So it's a really complete ecosystem. So with all platform models, the revenue comes from two sides. There's a physician side and there's a patient side. On the physician side, well, I don't know why the formatting got funky there, but it's B2B. There is wraparound services that the physician is getting to manage their practice. So they basically can just come in, hang their shingle virtually, and practice. They don't have to worry about any of the hassles of running a business. And then on the patient side, we have sort of the D2C side where they're paying for products separate from the physician, so we don't get into sort of that, that kickback situation. And we have really nice, healthy margins. So we designed our software to try to capture those margins as much as possible. So we're the youngest company, I think, on display today. 1 year. I think we just learned to walk, and we're eating solids now. So we started with a prototype. We took something, we duct taped it all together. We started practicing, got our product market fit down on the physician side and the patient side, and then added 7 clinicians. We have a bunch waiting to get on the platform as soon as we get this software out the door. And just organically acquired about 300 patients to really help us build this out. Generated some revenue, and got our pharmacy up and running, all the robotics necessary, the compounding lab, are completing that scalable software, and we've raised $900,000 so far in our capital raise, and we're raising another 600, 400 of which is committed. My co-founder is a pharmacist and MBA from right here in Madison, and we have a great team of advisors who are incredible entrepreneurs and business people right in southeastern Wisconsin. So happy to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tiffany. And now we have William Kohl, CEO of JangoBio.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, as much as I appreciate the promotion at COO, what I'm going to talk about today is not the science behind this. I think it'll be the most fascinating thing you'll ever hear in your life. I welcome anybody to come and talk with me about it after the presentation. I'm just giving you a few slides about where we are as a business and where we're going. And I know the panel is all about talking about how we got started and how we got to where we're going, lessons learned that hopefully benefit everyone. So JangoBio's based here out of Madison, Wisconsin. The founder is actually an assistant professor at the University of Wisconsin and had uncovered this therapy approach for reversing the effects of aging while studying Alzheimer's and other age-related diseases. As some of you may know, of a certain age, all animals and humans start to be impacted by age-related diseases at a certain point. We've correlated where that point is. Some interesting data that we can share with Sanjay, and discovered actually are working on a way to reverse the impact of those age-related symptoms. And essentially how we're doing that is we're taking hormones that degenerate over time, or at least go out of balance over time in your body as you age, and restoring those tissues. So this is a restorative therapy that takes your hormones back to where they were when you were at your peak youth. So the correlation between all animals is they start to consider age-related diseases once hormones have started to decline to a certain level. If you can reverse those hormones and keep them there, you can also restore the benefits of health. Where we are in the process is we've raised about $2.5 million so far. We've got 10 employees, 2 facilities, vivarium with hundreds of animals under study right now. We're about to close out a seed round for $2 million, open up another round for $6 million. Where we're going next is we expect to have our first major commercial product offering for companion animals next year. So essentially we'll be offering a product for cats, dogs, horses, other non-food related animals that will give them the benefit of extending their health and reversing effects of aging. Sorry, I think I went backwards, sorry. All right, so that's a little bit of our little funding history here. Like I said, we're about to close out that $2 million round and proceed into our next round. And we're expecting a major commercialization this coming year into the Django Pet. So we actually are, I would consider ourselves pre-revenue, but we've got 3 small revenue streams now. One with our vivarium, if anybody's looking for animal space, we're expanding animal space and opening up for people that have lamb animals that they need to house. We have a cell line that's associated with our restorative therapy that we're restoring hormone-related tissues with, and that's available. And then a few other lines. We've got a flow cytometer and some other things that we're renting space on. If anybody's looking for that, see me after this. That's where we are with those products. That's our exit plan. Look forward to being a part of this. Thanks.
Okay, and then finally, Gunnar Lyslo with the founder and CEO of Surfacide.
Thank you. Well, hey, good morning, everybody. We really appreciate the opportunity, Mike. It's glad to see a full room, especially after a tough game with the Brewers last night. So really fascinating stories. I guess I'm just pleased that you guys are interested to hear a little bit about the Surfacide story. When Mike and I were talking, he had asked us to just kind of prepare something, and I think one of the really effective ways of telling our particular story, we're a little bit older than some of the other companies here, so we're founded in 2010. First couple of years was dedicated towards R&D, but here we are in a little over 400 hospitals in the United States and then international presence. But I thought, kind of given this audience that there may be some value in just kind of allowing one of our customers to help really kind of tell that story. So if this thing goes, we'll just take 2 minutes here to let it
Everybody
talk.
is working together to advance the care of our patient. At Fax in St. Luke's, we had one of the highest healthcare facility onset rates of C. difficile in New York State, which was clearly unacceptable.
C. difficile is an acute infection that patients get. It's a bacterial spore that is very difficult to kill within the environment.
Illness from the organism can range from a mild illness with just diarrhea to a severe illness with toxic megacolon and severe sepsis that can result in the patient dying.
Everybody's looking at it very seriously. Could be a family member of mine. It could be a family member of any of our staff members. So we want to do the best we can.
We continue to struggle with our rates, even though we had the basic recommendations in place.
We know that we have to get people to wash their hands, we have to get them to clean the hospital, and we have to get them to use drugs responsibly. So what are all of the tools that we need to make that happen?
We really focused in on the environmental services.
We're going to monitor occupied beds, and we're going to look for beds that are noted as C. diff. We come in with our Surfacide machine, which is a 3-tower unit. The unit maps the room, decides how long it's going to need to run, and it will run a cycle.
And so that we had a really great process for cleaning the rooms with environmental services. And then on top of that, every single C. diff patient room discharge would get UV'd after terminal clean.
For the first time after the initiation of this campaign, we saw that state benchmark and that CDC benchmark underneath the national and state thresholds.
We went down from the mid-60s to starting to implement in 2017 to 51 to the low 30s by 2018, which was a dramatic drop from where we were. Each case of C. difficile costs tens of thousands of dollars. The savings of reducing the numbers from the mid-60s to the low 30s is tremendous. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
When you have good people and you have great buy-in from your key stakeholders and you have all the attention of the staff on board, you can improve your outcomes.
You can have a passionate infection preventionist who wants to lead the team, but your team has to consist of everybody for you to be successful.
So it's really a great story for us. Faxon St. Luke's small community hospital in upstate New York was one of our very first customers. And as what was stated in that video, they were the second worst performing institution in the state of New York when it came to hospital onset C. diff. And then they recently received an award. What I also love about that video is we had nothing to do with it. So, they put this all together because of what they were able to achieve. So let me frame up the issue. I think that a lot of times when I talk to an audience like that, maybe just a quick show of hands. I know we've got physicians. Are there other physicians or others associated with healthcare institutions? Okay, so a couple of you. Well, I hate to ruin your day, but when you look at healthcare institutions right now and the challenges that we have, healthcare-associated infections are a huge, huge problem. And this storyboard helps to really kind of tell part of that. When you take a look, if you were to enter a hospital today and you're immunocompromised or immunosuppressed, there's a 1 in 13 chance that you will acquire an infection as a result of being in that hospital. And then economically, that impacts us. Not only is it unfair to the patient, because no patient signs up for an infection when they're coming into a hospital seeking care, but there's just a huge economic burden. And with the Affordable Care Act, now these institutions are facing this burden, but us as taxpayers are also. So you can see that in the United States, and this is the United States alone, it's estimated that there are 687,000 infections taking place, resulting in 72,000 people dying on an annual basis. Can you believe that? 72,000 people in the most powerful country in the world are resulting in mortality associated with these healthcare-associated infections. Huge economic burden, obviously 7.1 million people, 99,000 people are dying, resulting in a $10 billion or $1,100 per patient cost. And so why is that? And this is really what Surfacide brings into the mix. When you take a look at the role of the environment, and it is definitely multifactorial, so you have antimicrobial stewardship and a number of additional factors. But in the institution themselves, what we identified when I founded the company is that the data showed that 50% of these surfaces are not being cleaned on a terminal disinfection process. The terminal disinfection process is when a patient exits the space, gunner comes into that room, 50% of these surfaces remain colonized. And unfortunately, many of these organisms are now multi-drug resistant. So when I started the company back in 2010, the real tough bug, and I'm sure many of you have familiarity, was MRSA. Now that particular video that you saw was hospital onset C. diff, but unfortunately the list is just getting longer and longer. So you have VRE, you have carbapenem-resistant Enterobacter acei, you have Acinetobacter that's being brought in from the Middle East. Unfortunately, there's not a month that goes by that there's not the emergence of one of these organisms that are becoming multi-drug resistant. And so that's what Surfacide is doing. We're providing a solution to these healthcare providers by bringing in this UVC disinfection modality, essentially flooding the space using this energy. We're just seeing tremendous results. On average, we'll work with an institution and we'll see reduction in infections anywhere from the low end of 25 to 30%, and we've had some hospitals that are reporting far greater than 50%. So it's really a rewarding space to be in because I know that, that we're making a difference. As I'd mentioned, we're a little bit of an older company, so I founded it in 2010. We're in well over 300 hospitals in the United States. Our lead investigative institutions, for those of you that are entrepreneurs, working with academic institutions, working with those clinicians that really have got it down, you can see that, we have some pretty good company with the Ohio State University and University of Pittsburgh. We're also in Milwaukee at the Medical College of Wisconsin. We're at Wisconsin Children's. We have a pretty good presence. And then outside of the U.S., I was just telling the panel, we just put together a really nice deal. So we're in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. We've got offices in Istanbul, Mexico City, Dubai, kind of all throughout the world. So again, for those of you that are starting companies, I've been there. In 2010, I thought, you know what, I'll put this company together and maybe I'll sell a couple of systems and it'll be interesting. Not in my wildest dreams did I ever think that we would be making the impact that, that we're really making here in the United States and the world. And our mission is pretty simple. We just want to work with institutions to really control these infections, and we are a firm believer that one infection is too many. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And now I'll bring up the moderator for the discussion, Andrew DeMarco from SVA Consulting.
So is this on? All right. So I don't have a slide.
There was a video.
Was there a slide?
My apologies.
Okay. Oh, that's inspirational music. Okay, so I'm Andrew DeMarco. I'm a principal at SVA Consulting. SVA is actually, I'll just give you the quick background so as I'm asking questions of this panel, you understand where they're coming from. So SVA is based in Madison and Brookfield. We're a professional services firm consisting of consulting, accounting, wealth management, and a trust company. I'm part of the consulting company. And what we do almost exclusively is work with companies that are in transition. My personal space, what I've started at SVA, is the SVA BioOps group. So we work with emerging life science companies, some in Wisconsin, Exact Sciences, and some on the coast, people like Portola, Veristem, other types of emerging biotechs, as they're moving from their clinical trial, research and development phase, to becoming either a successful in-market company or preparing themselves for a transaction. And what we do is we help them, as they're launching their first product or service, is helping them build out that business infrastructure to support it and support their strategy. So my fascination for my entire career, I've been involved in startups and on boards of companies and that sort of thing. I'm fascinated by these stories. And what the goal here today is I have a few questions to get everybody going, but we're really hoping that we get active participation from all of you and the questions that you want to ask of this group. So should we begin?
Yeah.
All right. So I got to get my questions out. All right. So, so the first question is, how have you all approached strategy? And specifically when you've had to make the tough decisions about where you're going next, where to invest, where not to invest, can you tell me how you've thought about translating your strategy into action?
Starting
Start
with
with
me,
Gunnar?
so I'm in the hot seat.
You're in the hot seat.
You know, I think that it is just so key, and I've got, you know, Kelsey here who's a member of our team. I think that it's ensuring that your team is completely aligned and you really just need to be laser focused. So I think the one thing that we did quite well at Surfacide is that I think when you're an entrepreneur, by the very nature of being an entrepreneur, you're really impassioned and you really go after some of these things. And it's easy to get, you know, sucked into chasing the shiny object. It really just takes that discipline as much as everybody up here on this panel has got a ton of grit and is really going to go after it. Making sure that you've got that focus, identify, align yourself with a very, very strong team. It's a little bit cliche. Make sure that everybody that is surrounding you is far, far better than you. That's where I'm very lucky because I got lots of smart people around me at this point. And I think that we're very aligned on that mission and with that focus so we can get it done.
Gunnar? Or, I'm sorry, Bob?
Bill. I'll take it. Adding to what Gunnar had said, in addition to that, I think what we saw, or I've seen, is that we've had to be flexible to take the paths down different directions as you're starting down a path and you see something ancillary come up that might be different than what you thought. The direction was that you were going to be willing to take that path, at least as far as you can with what resources you have, without burning everything that you have. The other thing that's helped us is to have collaborative support groups. There's a lot of resources here in the Madison area and Wisconsin overall, financially and otherwise. We've got 12 advisors on our team. They're all unpaid. They're either successful in business or they're successful in the industry.
Those are the best kind.
Exactly. We've got enough paid employees as well. But that helps a lot in being able to pick a direction and actually get resources to go down those directions.
All really true. And I would add that you don't have a business if you don't have customers. So I think one of the things that I bring to our business and that I think is critically important is just that listening. You have to listen to what people are telling you they want. If you think that you know what they want, probably it's not going to be true, or maybe even partially true. So anytime I have the opportunity to talk to patients, talk to physicians, and I do it all the time, I'm looking for clues as to whether or not we're on the right track. And that's really what's driving our strategy is, are we making our customers happy? Are we bringing them what they need? Are we doing something better than what they can get elsewhere? So that's a big part of our strategy.
Yeah, I would add to that, I would actually broaden the term a little bit. Strategy as a term comes from the military environment. It's about winning. To me, the strategic intent is far more important. What are we trying to achieve in the market? Especially as a young company, especially in the first 3 years, because in the first 3 years, the Excel model and the business plan that was written in Word and Excel are not worth the license cost of those pieces of software. Things change, life happens. You know, you'll find the investor who promised you $500,000 ghosted on you because he said, well, I don't know if I want to do this, or I'll do this only if you change a little bit, do this versus this. We as a company started as a direct-to-consumer, and we learned a lot from that. We learned about consumer behavior, but at the same time, the downside was we were trying to be everything to everyone. So we shifted our strategy from being a customer-based strategy to more of a market-based strategy, pivoted to B2B. That allowed us to put some context around the requirements of the individual, which our partners like self-insured employers or providers or plan members are taking care of. That helped a lot. But the key part in all this is the ability to learn. So one of the things which we've tried to encourage within our own organization is, as much as possible, let's not go in assuming that we know the answers. No one does. None of the startups do, none of the established players do, the academia doesn't. We're all here to learn to figure out what will work in the healthcare market. So let's keep that in mind, keep listening to customers and partners, and be ready to pivot as and when the opportunity presents itself, as long as you keep the true north constant.
Yeah, that's exactly, I was just going to use the term true north, like we have this North Star. This is what we're trying to build and how we're trying to move after it. And so what we've done is one thing I stole from Kevin and Manish at Exact was you set 3 priorities and you execute on those. And then if it doesn't fall in one of those 3, you don't waste time or money on it. And that's the only way you can continue to drive forward with laser focus on what you're doing. And so I send an update to my entire team of the employees and investors and advisors every month and really highlight what those 3 are and what we did on it and where we're struggling and a whole bunch of other stuff. And so our employees, we meet every day. I put 3 of us in one little office, so we're literally on top of each other and can't escape from each other. So we're very in contact, but then try to the broader team as well. Like, it's not just the employees, as you say, you have advisors that help. And so they're all aware of what we're trying to do and where we're struggling and what exactly we're trying to focus on each month.
Excellent. Any questions from the audience? We have to have some brave soul. There we go.
So in the context of advisors, how do you identify and recruit not only the advisors that are going to your supporters, but also the advisors that are not going to be your antagonists, but are going to be the really critical evaluators of what you're trying to do, both in business and technology?
Well, some of the advisors have a vested interest because they are investors. So right off the bat, they have some equity in their interest. Those were more brought on board with a level of interest that they had to being a part of it. A number of the investors in JangoBio specifically didn't get engaged just for the financial reward, which could be quite handsome. They got engaged because of the health impact to them and their families and to humanity as a whole. So they had a bigger picture in view of getting involved with the company. So we invited those people. They came from diverse backgrounds. They have all been successful financially in either starting businesses or managing current businesses. So their advice was invaluable. They sit on meetings that we have on a weekly basis, as are many of our investors invited to do. And they see where we're going with strategy, where we're struggling. They offer input, advice, and just as powerfully, they offer their own networks when we need to get help with something.
We took a slightly different approach on advisors. We emphasized diversity of thought. And I think it's a reflection of how our senior management team is structured now. Alignment to vision is far more important than a point of view of how to get there. So our advisory board includes a gentleman who's the CTO at GE Healthcare. He's also on our board. There's a gentleman who heads a Medicare plan out in Ohio. There's a consumer behavior specialist. There's a physician, and then there is a gentleman who runs a food business here in Madison area in the retail side. So fairly diverse views, but all aligned towards what is Healthio's true north and how can they individually provide input on trying to achieve that.
I guess I would add one thing, so a little bit different from the business strategy aspect of it, but one of the things that I always like to sit down with my team on is just ensuring that we're learning more from our customers. So we're post-revenue here. And, I guess where we're very, very fortunate is that we've had an opportunity to work with, major academic institutions. And in those academic institutions, there's infectious disease physicians that are world-renowned. And, if you take the time to just listen to them, it's kind of like you don't have all the answers. Trust me, we just don't have all the answers. You'd be amazed at how individuals, especially at those levels, just love to sit down with you and say, have you thought about this, or have you done that? And when you embrace that, it really allows you to take that back to the team and say, hey, this was a great idea that's coming from somebody that's in the trenches. So they're dealing with this particular infection. This is kind of what we need to do. So great example is Bernie Kamens. So Dr. Kamens is the corporate chief of infectious diseases for the entire Mount Sinai system in New York City. We got a very scary bug that's emerging, Candida auris. It's going to be really, really ugly out there. We're working very collaboratively with a world-renowned, physician, but a world-renowned medical institution to see what we can do to improve upon what some of those other solutions are. And my gosh, if you ask and you listen, a lot of that stuff is offered to you, kind of like a lot of that stuff is offered to you, for free, because they know that it takes the entrepreneurs to provide those types of solutions. And again, when you take a very collaborative approach, it's amazing how much you can accomplish.
Great. Anyone else?
I would say as a tactic, just network as much as you can. Talk to everyone you can about everything you're doing. Right. And you never know which person's going to lead to the right, have that next connection to someone that's going to be really helpful. That's been a number of times, that's kind of how we were able to get success, is that we were talking to someone, or I was complaining about a problem I was having, and someone's like, oh, well, here's the person that could solve that for you, and then they would make that introduction. But for the most part, I think most people are open to helping people and open introductions and sitting down and grabbing a cup of coffee and cutting over it. But you just have to keep having, talk to everybody you can about it, because you never know who's going to be the one that's going to connect you to the person that can solve the issue for you.
Okay.
Yep.
So each of you have taken on this adventure. Can you tell me a little bit about what's the adventure been like? How have you personally been thinking through it when you have some of your ups and your downs and that sort of thing? How do you get through it?
You guys want to start?
Ooh. Keeping your eye on the goal. I think if you're really passionate about your business and you believe in what you're doing, that will get you out of bed in the morning when you want to stay in the fetal position under the covers. And I think, you have to have your people. You have to have people in your life who are going to be there for you, because there's just so much that you undertake. So having your friends understand, get a good therapist, have somebody who can massage you once a month, really just surround yourself with support, because, it's a really, really hard job. And so trying to make sure that you stay healthy and that you have support during that process is incredibly critical.
Totally agree. We were just talking about it prior to this session starting, right? And we were referencing Jack Ma's video, who talks about think of 10 years, not 3.
Right.
This is equal parts anxiety, excitement, and gut-wrenching fear at the end of the day, right? So
Mostly fear, though.
and mostly fear, yeah. And one has to recognize the fact that, look, we will make mistakes. The only thing we can hope for is we make fewer mistakes the next day than we did today. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Waking up in the morning, like Tiffany said, and making sure that we are focused on what that outcome can possibly be that we dreamt of. That's it. That's what will keep you going.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would agree wholeheartedly with that. I think, again, for everybody in this audience that may be considering or is currently an entrepreneur, is just be prepared for failure. I'll share a very brief story. It was a really bad day in my life. So, we were rolling our technology into Ohio State University. I had based the development on the technology of the peer-reviewed form, so I thought we were locked. I mean, the champagne was on ice and we were ready to go. And we go in and we collect the data, and the data come back, and it showed absolutely zero impact on that bug that we were talking about in that video on C. difficile. And so I sat down with the researchers and I said, that's absolutely impossible. It just can't be. So we did the test again, and sure enough, it came back as completely ineffective. So it's kind of those moments where you either say you throw in the towel, or I think it may be a little overused right now, but if you're an entrepreneur and you don't have grit, forget it. I mean, you just have got to really kind of stick with it. And I said, you know what, I was already $1 million personally into it. What's a little bit more money? And we went after it, and then sure enough, we identified it. But again, maybe somewhat overused, from those failures can come tremendous success. So the reason that Surfacide, if we want to consider ourselves successful at this juncture, is what we learned in those 2 days in Columbus, Ohio, allowed us to redeploy or redevelop the technology and then achieve the kinds of things that we are now achieving. And had we not had that failure, I have a feeling that we probably would have just vacillated and probably not seen anywhere near the type of success, technology success that we've seen. So the takeaway is that no matter what you say, and I'm sure with your advisors and your VCs and all that kind of stuff, it's always going to cost more money. It's always going to take more time. You're always going to encounter those failures. If you've got the vision and you've got the passion, stick with it. It'll probably work out.
Yeah, I would agree. Passion and determination is maybe how you could summarize everything. Mm-hmm. You're going to run into challenges, and it's whether you make it through the challenges. I think there's some horrible statistic out there that 90% of startups fail within the first year.
I think it's
scary.
95, actually.
95?
Yeah.
Trying to make it worse.
And I'm an optimist. I really am.
Or horrible.
So the odds aren't good, but there's also a
complementary
study that showed the commonality between all the successful startups was the determination factor, not giving up when you have that gut-wrenching failure. There's going to be dead ends, there's going to be hard times, and you're going to give up a lot of your personal life, but it's exciting, it's thrilling, there's nothing more satisfying, I think, than having those successes when you have them.
Yeah, passion, determination, and the bottle of vodka on the top drawer.
So,
just vodka? Okay.
So it's interesting, between Milwaukee and Madison, we have these startup companies. First of all, talking to you all beforehand, right? You all have a passion for your mission. I didn't hear a passion about I want to grow this business to exit, to do this, to do that. Each and every one of you has a passion to change something, to some sort of outcome, which is, I think, is what it takes.
Absolutely.
The other thing that's interesting is how many employees do we have from these startups? Do we have?
I got 4.
Established, right? Cumulatively.
I don't know. We have 4.
7.
7?
A founder, co-founders, and 1.
Okay.
10.
10?
We have about 50.
50. So you look at what your passion and your energy is generating in terms of our economy and the lives of others working at your organizations and affected by them. It's awesome. So,
and maybe a little bit on that note, so obviously as you're going out and raising capital, so if you're an entrepreneur, you got to be really good at selling that story. So raising capital and then managing to that, but then it may tie back a little bit to the strategy. You also sometimes have to have the guts when you're meeting with the board or when you're meeting with your investors. If you have a successful company, and we're capitalists, right? So at the end of the day, we're all capitalists. So you're probably looking at some kind of an exit. in my opinion, and it would be interesting, maybe everybody else disagrees, I just really don't focus on that exit. I don't focus on the end game of those dollars. Now, I understand my investors think differently because they're looking for that cash out. But I think that if you have that passion and you can bring the members of your team to focus on that, everything else kind of comes into the mix. And then, so I've been at this a little bit longer. We do now have strategics that knock on our doors. And even with the strategics, it just hasn't been the right fit for us. We just want to really grow this. We want to really kind of get out there and make a difference. And gosh, I was in an interview. We had a candidate just come in yesterday. And you're talking with these guys. You look for that, for the fire in their eyes and their passion as far as what is it that they want to do. I mean, give me a guy with grit and passion versus a Harvard MBA any day of the week. Those are the guys you want when you're an entrepreneur.
Very good. Questions? Yes, we have two. So let's start here.
So Gunnar and Tiffany, you both talked about communicating with your customers and your clients. How regularly do you talk to your customers, and do you have a specific number that you talk to? Are there customers that are go-tos? And just talk to us a little bit more about that whole customer discovery and interaction.
Yeah, so I speak with all of our customers.
Whether you want to or not.
But I think that there are those that are more on the academic side from where we sit that we pay a little bit more attention to. We have kind of a quasi-senior advisory group, or we'll invite them into meetings where we can sit down and talk with them. And again, it's at least one of my styles is just making sure that all of our customers know that they're our most important customer. So I can't think of one of our customers that doesn't have my cell phone. And when you talk about the requirement, I mean, the other thing when you're an entrepreneur, you're on 7 days a week. So it could be a Friday night or a Saturday night where there's some particular issue at some major institution and they're like, hey, what do we need to do here because Ebola has just emerged and it's coming into the country. You're there for them, but then they're also really there for you. So we have very, very, very good relationships with all of our customers. And then we're able to, really lean on other key members of our team where all of those members have probably equal or even better relationships with our customers. It's amazing what you can do over a client breakfast or a client dinner. Gosh, when I'm in Milwaukee or Chicago or New York or wherever it is, making very, very good use of my time to just say, hey, what are we doing well? What are we, more importantly, where is it that we can improve? Those kinds of conversations are just always so key.
Yeah, that's all true. So our customers are patients and they're physicians. We have a small number of physicians. We have 7 right now, and then we're adding 2 next, or actually now it's October, this month. I have regular conversations with our physicians. I probably talk to all of them at least once a month, sometimes more than once a month. I know their kids. I know their situation. And these are people all over the United States, so they're not in Wisconsin. And I think the key to our business, not just because of the business itself, but the relationships that develop between the physicians that are on our platform and the patients that are on our platform, it's the relationships. That's the secret sauce. I mean, there's technology and there's all this great stuff, but it's really the stickiness of the patient and the physician. If we don't treat those customers well, if we don't ask them for their opinions regularly, if we don't hear them, if we don't hear what they're asking for, we don't have a business. So it's very key. In terms of patients, I talk to patients every day. I don't talk to all of them every day, but I talk to patients every day. Sometimes it's clinical, sometimes it's business oriented, sometimes it's help us build things. We actually had all of our physicians and a great deal of our patients alpha test our software with us. So I just think, again, that collaboration and relationship will help us. Those 7 physicians, that relationship will really help us keep them and all of their patients in our business. So if somebody else decides to pop up in some basement in Fargo doing the same business, we have a really, really strong bond with the people that we're working with, and I think that's important.
Toby, Sanjay, or Bill, anything to add?
We don't have that many customers just yet. We anticipate having them, but I have to agree with everything that Gunnar and
I would echo whatever Gunnar and Tiffany said. Only thing I would add is what I've learned in the last 25 years of B2B sales, if you're not talking to your customer, somebody else is. So.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have customers yet, but we do surveys and gather information from them, but we're not selling anything.
Market research.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. We had a question here.
Yeah, Gunnar touched on this briefly, but I'm wondering about like how you find those first few employees and what are the main characteristics that you look for and how to test those.
That's an excellent question. Yeah.
I only have one, so I'm gonna let these guys talk.
I can go. So to us, like I was alluding to this point earlier, the most important aspect was individuals who would join us because of their alignment with the goal. What can Healthio achieve? Not necessarily that because it's a startup, an exciting, glamorous thing to do, and it's a job. The most excited I get is because we've got a team of individuals in our team right now who are all in it because of what it is, right? They share the same passion.
They've bought into your mission.
Sorry?
They've bought into your mission.
They bought into the mission. And they all understand that despite the differing viewpoints, despite different approaches of getting to their end goal, they still belong to this mission of achieving what Healthio is trying to achieve. And to me, the seed for long-term sustenance of an organization has to be those set of people who align to the mission very, very strongly. If our first set of people can do that, then it just percolates downwards from that point onwards as we grow.
Our path has been a little bit of an interesting one when it comes to that. I guess where we're just very, very fortunate is that some of our employees are actually former customers. So I think that a lot of the theme that you're hearing here is passion. So when you're there, and they can sense the energy, so they sense the energy when you're meeting with them, but then they see the results of, specific to us, they see some of our results, they're like, gosh, that's a company that I want to go work for. And so that networking element, I don't know about you guys, but I bet you I get 50 emails a day from headhunting firms. Like they've got the magic sauce, we've got this candidate and all that kind of stuff. I don't, if there's any headhunters in the room. I mean, it just hasn't worked for us. It just hasn't worked for us. So it seems like I'm just very fortunate where either our customers are looking out for us or people kind of see what it is that we're doing and they're like, hey, Gunnar, I ran across this guy and I think that he would be a great, great fit in your organization. And when I have that kind of a warm handoff, I get on the phone and I say, hey, how would you like to be a guest of ours in Waukesha, and we'll bring you in and let you hear that story. It's just a really authentic way, and then now you got somebody they're really wanting to be a part of your team versus just being there for the paycheck. The paycheck's important, but I'd rather have somebody there that's there for the passion.
Toby, this is your networking.
Yeah, that's how we have a couple of our hires. I mean, I think the other thing is we evaluate I was me. We're evaluating on a couple of things. One, technical skill, does this person, can they do this technical thing I need them to do? That's the easiest one. And then two, are they have the risk appetite for a startup? There is a risk reward here, and do they have that passion of a small team can really affect huge change? We have all relative, even at 50, it's a small team, and you can build something pretty massive with that and get that. Do they want to work with this small number of people and build something great?
And I'd like to, that's just a really valuable point. So in the interview process, it's a little bit like dating, right? I just find it far easier if you're just completely transparent. Being in a startup is not for the faint of heart. It is a tough. And so one of the things that I always say, because to this day, I'm still the guy that's taking out the trash. So if they recognize that, hey, there's a lot of fun, but there's a lot of work, but it's different. We don't have an HR, department. And so if you're used to working for a really, really large company and you want that assurance and kind of you're not willing to get out of your comfort zone, they're probably not going to be a good fit. But I would rather learn that early on in the interview process than bringing somebody on or just trying to, pull the wool over our eyes like, hey, this is going to be the greatest experience in your life, only to find out that they really want to work for a company that has an HR department. You guys may have them. I don't have them, so.
They need to self-select.
They have to be a self-starter, too.
Exactly.
I mean, the first person we hired, she reached out and was like, I just want to learn more about the biotech industry in town. Could we grab a cup of coffee? She knew I was hiring at the time, and I think we had coffee. She didn't realize I was interviewing her.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Right?
That's how you do it.
Great day, but she
Okay,
will.
we have about 3 minutes left. Additional comments from the rest of you?
I think everyone would agree that things are going to take longer and cost more than you think, so you have to be prepared for that.
Okay.
And I think Sanjay said this, no matter what you did in your business plan or had on your spreadsheet, it's going to be different in a few years, so be prepared for that
It's going to be
as
wrong,
well.
blatantly wrong.
I would. You know, the thing for the audience is, and I'd be curious, there's probably no more rewarding experience if you've got an idea and you've got the guts and the grit to go after it. I would encourage you to go after it, to really kind of take that risk. The worst thing that'll happen is it'll fail. It's not a big deal. Just really embrace it and go after it. I think that you'd probably say, gosh, you know, I had this cushy job at IBM or wherever, and, you know, I didn't want to take that risk, and then 20 or 30 years, you like coulda, woulda, shoulda. You got to be wired in a special way. I get it. I mean, my office is a padded room, and I'm in a straitjacket half of the time. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I would say it's worth the journey.
Let me add one thing to what Gunnar said. I think that complements it. Through your life, you're going to look back on things that you didn't do and probably regret them more than the things you did do, even if you failed at the things you did do. So I think a lot of the people that are involved in startup businesses look at their life that way. What if? You want to be sitting at the end of it saying, what if I had tried that? And that's why our people are on board. They want to be a part of something that could be exciting and big, even though it doesn't have an HR department and it doesn't have a lot of the benefits. Honestly, it doesn't even have security, you know. Yeah. But it's an exciting ride, and it's got an opportunity to go somewhere. Yeah. So you're saying there's a chance. That's the theme we want to hear.
Yeah. If I can quickly rephrase what Gunnar said, you know, it's not about failure. In fact, there is no failure. In fact, even that 5% which the statistics talk about, they're not failures. Yeah. I can tell you that what I have learned in the last 3 years, I didn't learn in the first 25.
For sure.
So failure is entirely dependent upon how you look at it. There is no failure in the startup world because the amount of learning you have about human behavior, about relationships, about, you know, when we started, I used to start my day with database design and end with cap tables and legal contracts. You were doing everything compared to my prior job, where I had large teams to take care of stuff, right? The learning is just phenomenal, and then you take that learning and apply it to the next one, even if it is a failure. Mm-hmm. In my view, nothing fails in the startup world. This is all wins as individuals.
Mindset is key.
Mindset
Very
is
good.
Totally.
So let's thank our 5 guests here.